The smell of burnt toast filled the kitchen, a fitting aroma for the morning I had. Marcus, my husband of 15 years, stood across the island, calmly spreading marmalade on his perfectly brown toast. "Pearl," he began, his voice too cheerful for 7 a.m., "I need to tell you something." My stomach lurched. I knew. I'd felt it coming for months. The subtle shifts in his routine, the averted glances, the late nights at the office that stretched later and later. "There's someone else," I said flatly, pushing the charred toast away. He didn't flinch. "Her name is Well. It doesn't matter right now. The important thing is, she'll be moving in." My hand trembled as I reached for my coffee. "Moving in," I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Into our house." He nodded, oblivious to the icy rage brewing beneath my forced composure. "We've found a place together, actually, just down the road. It's bigger, more suitable." Suitable for what? For entertaining his new lover while I, his wife, the woman who'd stood by him through thick and thin, was relegated to the sidelines. "And what about Eleanor?" I asked, my voice tight. "Our daughter. Does she get a say in this?" He waved a dismissive hand. "Eleanor's grown. She'll understand. Understand that her father, the man she adored, was trading her mother in for a younger model." The injustice of it all burned in my chest. I'd poured my heart and soul into our family, into our business, Jenkins Construction. We'd started it from scratch, working side by side, sacrificing everything to build it into the thriving company it was today. And now, just as we were finally reaping the rewards, he was discarding me like yesterday's newspaper. "And the business?" I asked, forcing myself to remain calm. My voice was steady, even though my insides felt like a shattered vase. He paused, a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher in his eyes. "We'll need to discuss that," he said carefully. "Obviously, things will have to change." Change. That seemed to be the theme of the morning. Everything I'd known, everything I'd worked for, was about to change. "I see," I replied, my mind racing. "I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't plead. I'd spent years building something with this man, only to have him tear it down without a second thought." So I continued, my voice now laced with a newfound steel. "When exactly is this transition supposed to take place?" He seemed surprised by my composure. Perhaps he'd expected tears, hysterics. He'd underestimated me. "Next week," he said, taking a bite of his toast. "We're finalizing the lease on the new house. I'll pack my things this weekend." "Pack your things," I echoed, a cold smile playing on my lips. "Certainly. Take whatever you need." I stood up, my chair scraping against the tiled floor. "I have a meeting in an hour. Let me know when you're gone. I'll have the locks changed." He stared at me, his jaw slack. Finally, he managed to stammer, "Pearl, you can't be serious." I met his gaze, my own eyes unwavering. "Oh, I assure you, Marcus," I said softly, "I am entirely serious." I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving him sitting there, stunned into silence. As I walked up the stairs to get ready for my meeting, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but beneath it, something else was stirring, a quiet resolve. I wouldn't let him break me. I wouldn't let him take everything I'd worked for. I would rebuild. I would rise from the ashes of this betrayal stronger and more determined than ever. I glanced at the framed photo of Eleanor and Julian on my nightstand. Eleanor, my bright, beautiful daughter. She would be getting married next year. I wouldn't let Marcus's selfishness taint her happiness. I wouldn't let him ruin the wedding. And suddenly, a seed of an idea, a glimmer of a plan, began to form in my mind. A plan not just to survive, but to thrive. A plan that would leave Marcus speechless. Rain lashed against the attic window, mimicking the drumming anxiety in my chest. Grandma's attic smelled of mothballs and old dreams. I was barely 10, perched on a stool, meticulously sorting buttons for her endless sewing projects. "Pearl," she'd said, her voice raspy, but firm. "A woman's hands are her fortune. They can build, they can mend, they can nurture." She'd paused, her gaze piercing. "Never forget that." I didn't understand then, not really. All I knew was the quiet satisfaction of placing each pearl button, each brass button, into its designated jar. The rhythmic clink was a small, steady sound in a world that often felt loud and chaotic. Grandma wasn't a woman of grand gestures. Her love was woven into the everyday, the warm bread she baked each morning, the stories she'd tell while darning socks, the way she'd hum a little tune while tending her small vegetable garden. Every seed, she'd say, handing me a tiny packet of carrot seeds, holds a promise. You just have to give it what it needs to grow. I watched, fascinated, as she dug neat rows in the earth, her hands moving with practiced ease. And sometimes, she added, her eyes twinkling, what it needs most is a little tough love. I remember furrowing my brow at that, picturing myself scolding a tiny carrot sprout. My own childhood wasn't always easy. We didn't have much, but Grandma made sure we had enough. She taught me the value of hard work, not just with words, but with the quiet example of her own tireless hands. Idle hands are the devil's workshop, she'd say, catching me daydreaming by the window. Go find something useful to do. And so I would, whether it was weeding the garden, helping her with the preserving, or even just sweeping the porch. Every task, no matter how small, was a lesson in responsibility, in taking pride in what you do. One sweltering afternoon, I remember complaining about the endless chores. "Grandma," I whined, "why do I have to do all this?" She stopped her work, her hands still covered in flour from kneading dough. "Pearl," she said, looking me straight in the eye, "life isn't about getting what you want. It's about building something worthwhile, something that lasts." She wiped her hands on her apron and took my face in hers. "You're stronger than you think. Remember that when times get tough." I didn't fully grasp her words then, but they resonated within me, a quiet echo of strength in the face of adversity. Years later, when Marcus and I were struggling to get Jenkins Construction off the ground, I often thought of Grandma's lessons. Long nights poring over blueprints, endless meetings with skeptical investors, the constant worry about making payroll. It was exhausting, overwhelming. "Marcus," I'd say, frustration lacing my voice, "are you sure we can do this?" He'd just smile, that confident, charming smile that had first drawn me to him. "Pearl," he'd reply, squeezing my hand, "we're a team. We can handle anything together." And for a long time, I believed him. I poured my heart and soul into the business, working alongside him, sharing the burden, the sacrifices, the dream. Grandma's words became my mantra. Build something worthwhile, something that lasts. I remember one particularly bleak winter when a major project fell through and we were on the verge of bankruptcy. I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of overdue bills, when I felt a familiar hand on my shoulder. "Pearl," Marcus said softly, "it's all right. We'll figure it out." His words were meant to be comforting, but they felt hollow, inadequate. I closed my eyes, picturing Grandma in her attic, her hands sorting buttons, her voice calm and steady. "A woman's hands are her fortune," she'd said. I opened my eyes, a new resolve hardening within me. "Marcus," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "we need to rethink our strategy. We can't keep doing things the same way and expect different results." I started working even harder, leveraging my financial background to restructure the company's finances, negotiating better deals with suppliers, seeking out new investors. I barely slept, fueled by a fierce determination to not just survive, but to thrive. "Marcus," I'd say, pointing to the latest financial reports, "look, we're finally making progress." He'd nod, seemingly impressed, but there was a distance in his eyes, a subtle shift in his demeanor that I couldn't quite place. Looking back, I realized that was the beginning of the end, the subtle cracks forming in the foundation of our marriage, the foundation I had worked so hard to build. The thought of Eleanor and Julian's upcoming wedding gnaws at me, a constant reminder of the family I thought I had. I look at my hands, calloused now from years of hard work. Grandma's words echo in my mind, no longer just a childhood lesson, but a prophecy fulfilled. "A woman's hands are her fortune." I clench my fists, feeling a surge of something I haven't felt in a long time. Not just anger, but power. The power to build, to mend, and perhaps, just perhaps, to reclaim what was lost. I have a plan, and it starts now. The scent of warm yeast and sugar drifted up through the floorboards, a constant reminder of the sacrifices we were making. "We'll have a real office one day, Pearl," Marcus said, not looking up from the blueprint spread across our kitchen table. "One with a view, not the smell of Mrs. Donatelli's cinnamon rolls." He chuckled, but I didn't share the joke. "It's not funny, Marcus. We're eating ramen for the third night this week. Ramen and cinnamon rolls. Not exactly the empire you promised." I pushed aside the stack of invoices I'd been working on. "We need to be more careful with our spending. That new cement mixer ate up half our profits this month." He finally looked up, his brow furrowed. "Pearl, we need the best equipment if we're going to compete with the big boys. Jenkins Construction will be a name everyone knows. You'll see." His voice held that familiar blend of ambition and impatience that both thrilled and worried me. "We need to think long-term. This is an investment." He leaned back, stretching his arms. "Besides, we're doing fine. Don't worry so much." I swallowed the lump in my throat. Worry was all I seemed to do these days. Fine was relative. Fine was living in a cramped apartment above a bakery, the constant rumble of the ovens vibrating through the floor. Fine was working 18-hour days, juggling bookkeeping, client calls, and even site visits, all while Marcus focused on the big picture. Fine was putting off having Eleanor. the daughter we both longed for, because we could barely afford to feed ourselves, let alone a child. Look, he said, softening his tone as he noticed my expression. I know it's tough, but it'll be worth it. I promise. We just need to land that Henderson contract, and then things will really take off. He walked over and put his hand on my shoulder. Just have faith in me, Pearl. We're a team, remember. I forced a smile. Team Jenkins, I echoed, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Of course we were a team. We always had been. We'd started Jenkins Construction from the ground up, armed with nothing but Marcus's construction experience and my knack for numbers. We'd weathered storms, both literal and metaphorical, patching leaky roofs in the rain and scrambling to make payroll. We'd shared a dream, a vision of a future where our hard work would pay off. But lately, that dream felt more and more like Marcus's, and less like ours. He was so focused on the future he envisioned, that empire he was building, that he seemed to forget the sacrifices we were making in the present. The late nights, the skipped meals, the growing distance between us. I spent the rest of the evening poring over the books, trying to find a way to stretch our meager resources further. The aroma of baking bread, once a comforting presence, now felt suffocating, a symbol of our limited circumstances. I imagined a spacious office, sunlight streaming through large windows, a view of the city skyline instead of a brick wall. I pictured myself sitting behind a large desk, confidently managing a thriving business. But it was a fleeting fantasy, quickly replaced by the reality of our current situation. Later that night, as I lay beside Marcus, listening to the rhythmic rise and fall of his breath, a seed of something new began to grow within me. It wasn't resentment, not yet. It was something quieter, more determined, a resolve to ensure my own future, regardless of where Marcus's ambition took him. I realized that I, too, had a vision of independence, of security, of building something that truly belonged to me. The next morning, I woke before Marcus and quietly slipped out of bed. The bakery downstairs was already bustling with activity, the clatter of trays and the murmur of voices filtering up through the floorboards. I made myself a cup of instant coffee and sat at the kitchen table, the blueprints still spread out from the previous night. I picked up a pen and began to make notes, small calculations and adjustments that could improve our margins. As I worked, the scent of cinnamon rolls no longer felt stifling. It smelled of possibility, of the slow, steady rise of something new. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I also knew that I was capable of more than just balancing the books for Marcus's dream. I had my own dreams to build, my own empire to create, and I wouldn't let anything, not even Marcus's blind ambition, stand in my way. The flicker of determination within me grew into a steady flame, fueled by the quiet promise I made to myself that morning. I would build my own future, brick by brick, just as we had built Jenkins Construction. And this time, it would be entirely my own. Rain lashed against the windows of our little bungalow, a counterpoint to the warmth blooming inside me. 7 years. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of scrimping and saving. 7 years of pouring every spare penny into Jenkins Construction. And finally, we had a place to call our own. It's perfect, "Marcus," I said, my voice thick with emotion. He wrapped his arms around me, the scent of sawdust and rain clinging to his work clothes. "Our first home, Pearl. Just the beginning." He kissed my forehead, and for a moment, the anxieties of the pastures melted away. I saw a future unfolding before us, filled with laughter, family dinners, and the comforting weight of shared dreams. Eleanor, our little girl, wouldn't drive for another few years, but I could already picture her running down the hallway, her tiny feet patting against the newly polished floorboards. "I can't wait to paint the nursery," I said, tracing the outline of the smallest bedroom with my finger. Marcus chuckled. "A little early for that, don't you think?" He wasn't wrong, but the thought of creating a space for our child, a haven within this haven, filled me with an almost unbearable joy. "Just dreaming," I replied, leaning into him. "Dreaming of our future." That night, we celebrated with cheap champagne and takeout Chinese. The flimsy paper plates a stark contrast to the elegant dinnerware I envisioned gracing our future dining table. We talked about expanding Jenkins Construction, about hiring more staff, about maybe, just maybe, one day taking a real vacation. "Hawaii," I suggested, twirling a strand of lo mein around my chopsticks. "Imagine lying on a beach, listening to the waves." Marcus laughed. "We'll get there, Pearl. We'll get there." His words were a promise, a shared aspiration woven into the fabric of our lives. The following weeks were a flurry of unpacking and decorating. I spent hours trawling flea markets and antique shops, searching for hidden treasures that would breathe life into our little house. Each chipped teacup, each faded tapestry, held a story, a promise of the rich life we were building together. "Look what I found," I'd exclaim, rushing through the door with my latest acquisition, a vintage rocking chair that I envisioned cradling our future children. Marcus would smile, shake his head, and tell me I was nesting, but his eyes held a warmth, a shared excitement for the life we were creating. We planted a small garden in the backyard, a patch of green amidst the concrete jungle. Tomatoes, basil, peppers, a miniature Eden that symbolized our hopes for growth and abundance. I pictured us tending to the plants together, watching them flourish under our care, just as our love for each other had blossomed amidst the hardships of building a business from the ground up. "Our little oasis," Marcus said one evening, as we sat on the porch swing, watching the fireflies dance in the twilight. "A place to escape the pressures of the world." The house became more than just four walls and a roof. It was a testament to our hard work, our shared sacrifices, our unwavering belief in each other. It was the foundation upon which we planned to build our future, a future filled with children's laughter, family gatherings, and the quiet contentment of a life well lived. I couldn't have imagined then, sitting on that porch swing with the man I loved, that the foundation we had so carefully laid would soon crumble beneath my feet, leaving me standing amidst the ruins of our shared dreams, clutching at the fragments of a future that would never be. The rain that had serenaded our arrival now felt like a mournful dirge, a prelude to the storm that was about to break over my life. I shivered, pulling my sweater tight around me, a premonition of the cold, desolate landscape that awaited me. The air felt heavy, thick with unspoken words, and the weight of a secret that would soon shatter the fragile peace of our little haven. Something was shifting, something was changing, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the happiness we had found in this small house was about to slip through my fingers like grains of sand. The sterile scent of the doctor's office clung to me like a shroud. "I'm afraid there's been no change, Pearl," Dr. Ramirez said gently, her hand resting on mine. "Your hormone levels," she trailed off, and I knew. Another month, another negative. "We can discuss other options." "Of course," she continued, but I just shook my head. Other options meant more money, more time, more hope to be crushed. I stood, mumbled a thank you, and walked out, the click of my heels echoing the emptiness in my heart. The drive home was a blur. I pulled into the driveway of our modest ranch house, the one Marcus and I had bought together, full of dreams of a family. We'd envisioned a swing set in the backyard, laughter echoing through the halls, the pitter-patter of little feet. Now, the silence was deafening. Marcus was already home, hunched over his blueprints at the kitchen table. He looked up as I entered, his brow furrowed. "Well?" he asked, his voice tight. I shook my head again, unable to speak. The look in his eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place a disappointment, irritation, sent a chill down my spine. He sighed, turning back to his drawings. "We'll try again next month," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I don't think I can," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. He didn't respond, his silence a sharper blow than any harsh word. That night, we lay in bed, a vast chasm between us. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the ticking of the clock on the nightstand, each tick a reminder of the passing time, the dwindling hope. This had become our routine. Doctor's appointments, hushed conversations, forced optimism followed by crushing disappointment. The years bled into each other, marked by the rhythm of my menstrual cycle, a cruel monthly reminder of what we couldn't have. It wasn't just the physical toll, the endless tests and procedures. It was the emotional weight, the constant hope and despair that was slowly eroding us. We rarely spoke of it anymore. It became the elephant in the room, casting a long shadow over our lives. We'd pour our energy into Jenkins Construction, the business we'd started together, brick by brick, just like we'd planned to build our family. We worked late, weekends blurring into weekdays, the shared struggle a fragile bond holding us together. But even the shared purpose couldn't fill the void. One evening, I came home to find Marcus on the phone, his voice hushed and urgent. He hung up quickly as I entered, his face pale. "That was Eleanor," he said, his voice strained. "Julian proposed." My heart clenched. Eleanor was like a daughter to me, the child we never had. I forced a smile. "That's wonderful news," I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. "We have to celebrate." He looked at me, a strange expression on his face. "Actually," he began, his voice hesitant, "Eleanor wants to have the wedding here." My brow furrowed. "Here, at the house?" I asked, confused. He nodded, avoiding my gaze. "Yes. She and Julian, they think it would be meaningful." Meaningful? The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. "But why?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He finally met my eyes, a flicker of guilt in their depths. "They want to start a family, Pearl," he said softly. "They think this house, it has good energy. Good energy for starting a family." The words hit me like a physical blow. The house that echoed with our unmet dreams, the house that held the ghosts of our lost hopes, was now going to be the cradle for their new beginnings. I nodded slowly, the lump in my throat making it hard to speak. Of course, I managed to say, it's their day. But inside, something cracked. The years of disappointment, the unspoken grief, the constant churning, it all came crashing down on me. I excused myself and went to our bedroom, closing the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the framed photo on the nightstand. It was a picture of Marcus and me taken on our honeymoon, our faces full of hope and dreams. The dreams we'd shared, the future we'd envisioned, it all felt like a cruel mockery now. I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face. The quiet sobs turned into gut-wrenching cries, years of pent-up pain finally finding release. I don't know how long I sat there, lost in the depths of my despair. But as the tears subsided, a strange sense of calm washed over me. It wasn't peace, not yet. It was something else, something colder, harder. A quiet resolve began to take root, a seed of defiance in the barren landscape of my grief. I wiped my tears, a new expression hardening my features. I would not be broken. I would not let this be the end of my story. I would find a way to rebuild, to reclaim my life, to create a future that was even brighter than the one I had lost. The details were still hazy, but one thing was clear. I would rise from the ashes of my broken dreams, stronger and more determined than ever. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The Jenkins Construction office, once a symbol of shared dreams with Marcus, now felt entirely mine. I remember him saying, just a few years ago, "Pearl, you'll never manage without me." That stung more than anything, more than the betrayal itself. He underestimated me. He saw my focus on family, my support of his ambitions, as weakness. He thought I was just a housewife playing at business. "You're better off sticking to making sandwiches, Pearl," he'd sneered. Now, his words echoed in the spacious, redesigned office, but they fueled me, not broke me. I looked out at the cityscape, a concrete jungle I was slowly conquering, one contract at a time. The years blurred into a relentless rhythm of work, early mornings, late nights, weekends spent poring over blueprints and negotiating deals. I learned everything, every nuance of construction, every loophole in a contract, every trick to securing financing. "Ms. Jenkins, we have a problem on Site 3. My project manager, Ben, would interrupt occasionally. The concrete delivery is delayed." I'd take a deep breath, already calculating solutions. "Cole Rodriguez," I'd instruct. "Tell him we need that shipment by tomorrow, or he can forget about the next 3 projects." I was tough, decisive, and I didn't tolerate excuses. Eleanor called sometimes, her voice tinged with a mixture of concern and awe. "Mom, are you sure you're taking care of yourself?" she'd ask. "You sound exhausted." I reassured her, telling her I was fine, that I was building something important. I wasn't just building a business. I was building a future, a life beyond Marcus and the pain he'd caused. "Julian says you're practically a legend in the industry now," she'd say, a hint of pride in her voice. That's when I knew I was on the right track. Julian, always the pragmatist, wouldn't be impressed easily. I remember the first time I walked into a boardroom full of men, all seasoned veterans of the construction world. They looked at me, a woman, as an anomaly. Some smirked, some were openly dismissive. "Ms. Jenkins," one said condescendingly, "are you sure you're in the right place? The ladies' room is down the hall." I didn't flinch. "I'm here to discuss the Peterson Tower project," I stated, my voice unwavering. "And I assure you, gentlemen, I know more about it than all of you combined." I proceeded to dismantle their assumptions, presenting a flawless proposal that left them speechless. That day, I earned their respect, and something more important, their fear. The contracts started rolling in bigger and more lucrative than anything Jenkins Construction had seen before. I expanded the company, taking on new projects, new challenges. I hired the best, trained them relentlessly, and instilled in them the same drive that burned within me. "We're not just building buildings," I told them in a company meeting. "We're building legacies." I saw a flicker of something in their eyes: respect, ambition, maybe even a touch of the same fire that fueled me. I rarely thought about Marcus anymore. He was a ghost, a shadow of the man I once loved. I heard through the grapevine that his new venture had failed spectacularly. He'd tried to replicate what we had built together, but without my expertise, his vision crumbled. I felt a fleeting pang of something, not pity, not exactly, perhaps satisfaction. It was hard to define. "Miss Jenkins, there's a call for you on line 1. My assistant, Sarah, interrupted my thoughts. "It's Mr. Thompson from Global Properties." My heart quickened. This was the big one. The project that would cement Jenkins Construction as a major player in the global market. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. "Thompson," I said, my voice cool and confident. "I've been expecting your call." This was my moment. This was my empire, and I had built it all myself, brick by brick, from the ashes of betrayal. This was just the beginning. I could feel it in my bones. Something bigger was coming. Something spectacular. The wind whipped around me at the Sunset Ridge site, biting through my coat as I surveyed the sprawling expanse. Years had passed since that dreadful day Marcus announced his girlfriend's impending arrival, since Eleanor and Julian, so full of judgment, suggested I simply move on. Now, here I stood, overseeing the largest, most ambitious development Jenkins Construction had ever undertaken. It wasn't just rows of cookie-cutter houses we were building, but a whole community, a shopping center, a park, even a small amphitheater. I watched the earth movers carving into the hillside, a small army of workers swarming the foundations. Mrs. Jenkins, Carlos, my foreman, approached, his hard hat clutched in his hand. "The concrete delivery is on schedule. Should be pouring the first foundations by tomorrow afternoon." I nodded, a grim satisfaction settling in my chest. "Good. Make sure everything is triple-checked, Carlos. This project needs to be flawless." He assured me it would be, his confidence mirroring my own. I'd learned a lot in the past few years, not just about construction, but about leadership. I'd put in the hours, studied every detail, earned the respect of every worker on site, from the architects to the laborers. This wasn't just about bricks and mortar. It was about building something that reflected my vision, a testament to what I could achieve on my own. The drainage system, are we still on track with the revised plan? I asked, recalling the last-minute adjustments we'd made to accommodate the unexpected bedrock we encountered. Carlos confirmed we were, pulling out blueprints and pointing to the intricate network of pipes and culverts. I studied them intently, my fingers tracing the lines. This wasn't the project Marcus had envisioned. He'd scoffed at the scale, called it reckless, too risky. He'd wanted to stick with the safe, predictable suburban developments that had become our bread and butter. But I knew better. I knew this land, I knew this market, and I knew we could create something truly special, something that would surpass anything we'd done before. And the community center, I asked, turning my attention to the plans for the central hub of the development. Have we finalized the design for the atrium? Carlos nodded, a smile spreading across his weathered face. Yes, ma'am. The glass panels arrived this morning. They're spectacular. He described the soaring ceilings, the natural light flooding the space, the planned green wall that would climb the interior. It was exactly as I'd pictured it. A space for families to gather, for the community to thrive. A far cry from the cramped, functional community halls typical of such developments. Later that day, back in my office, overlooking the city skyline, I reviewed the financial projections. The numbers were impressive. Sunset Ridge was projected to be not only our most ambitious, but also our most profitable venture yet. Much more profitable than anything Marcus had ever conceived. My phone buzzed. It was Eleanor. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Mom," she began, her voice hesitant. "Julian and I were wondering if you might be free for dinner next weekend. We'd love to catch up." There was a forced casualness to her tone that I couldn't quite decipher. It had been months since we'd spoken properly, ever since their thinly veiled attempts to convince me to sell my shares in Jenkins Construction after Marcus left. They'd painted a bleak picture of my future, suggesting I wouldn't be able to manage without him. "We're going to be announcing the pre-sales for Sunset Ridge soon," I said casually, keeping my voice even. "It's generating a lot of buzz." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Oh, that's great, Mom," Eleanor replied, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place in her voice. "We saw the billboards. It looks big." "It is," I said simply. "Perhaps we can talk more about it at dinner." I could almost hear the wheels turning in her head. They'd been following the development. Of course. Everyone in the industry was. They'd probably assumed it would fail. Another example of my supposed inability to manage the business without Marcus. I could practically feel their surprise radiating through the phone. "Dinner would be lovely," I said finally, a small smile playing on my lips. "I'll send over the details." As I hung up, I looked out at the cityscape, the lights twinkling in the gathering dusk. The view from my new office was spectacular, far better than the view from the old Jenkins Construction headquarters. It was a view that symbolized everything I had accomplished, everything I had built. Brick by brick, deal by deal, I had risen from the ashes of betrayal and created something truly remarkable. And this, I realized, was just the beginning. Sunset Ridge was just one piece of the puzzle. I had bigger plans, grander visions, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I was going to achieve every single one of them. The thought of sharing the news of my success with Eleanor and Julian at dinner, of seeing the surprise on their faces, filled me with a quiet, profound satisfaction. It wouldn't be about rubbing their noses in it. Not exactly. It would be about showing them, and myself, that I was more than capable, that I was stronger than they thought, stronger than I even knew. The true payoff wouldn't be just the financial success, but the quiet, unshakable knowledge of my own resilience, of my ability to rise above adversity and build an empire of my own, an empire built not on revenge, but on sheer, unyielding determination. And that was a victory more valuable than any amount of money. The wind whipped across the Sunset Ridge development, tugging at my hair, and the blueprints clutched in my hand. 3 years. 3 years since Marcus had announced, so casually, that his girlfriend would be moving in. 3 years since my world had tilted on its axis. "You're being dramatic, Pearl." He'd scoffed then. "It's just a little adjustment." Now, 3 years later, watching the skeletal frames of future homes rise against the fiery sunset, I felt a different kind of fire burning within me. It wasn't the raw agony of betrayal, but something cooler, more focused, something like herself. Marcus had become a shadow in the periphery of my life. He still technically lived in our house, the one I'd poured my heart and soul, not to mention my own inheritance, into renovating. But he was a ghost, flitting in and out, preoccupied with her. He barely registered my presence, let alone the monumental progress of Jenkins Construction. "Another late night, Pearl," he mumbled one morning, passing me in the kitchen. Still obsessed with those houses, I looked up from the spreadsheets detailing our rapidly expanding portfolio. "Someone has to make sure this company stays afloat, Marcus," I replied evenly, meeting his gaze. He just shrugged and poured himself a cup of coffee, his eyes distant and clouded. "I'd thrown myself into the business, the one we'd started together, the one I'd helped build brick by brick. Initially, it was a refuge, a way to channel the crushing weight of his betrayal. But it became something more. It became my triumph, while Marcus drifted further and further away, lost in his new life. I was building something real, something tangible, something that was entirely mine. The Sunset Ridge development was my baby. I'd personally overseen every detail, from the architectural designs to the landscaping plans. I knew every beam, every pipe, every inch of wiring in those houses. They were rising from the dust, a testament to my resilience, my vision, and they were making me incredibly wealthy, Mrs. Jenkins. A voice boomed beside me, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Frank, the site foreman, his face weathered and kind. "The foundations for Phase 2 are ready for inspection. Just waiting on your say-so. Let's take a look, Frank," I said, tucking the blueprints under my arm. As we walked, I pointed to a cluster of trees at the edge of the property. "I want those preserved, Frank. Make sure the landscaping crew understands. They're crucial to the aesthetic." He nodded, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "You've got a good eye, Mrs. Jenkins. This whole place is coming together beautifully." His words were a balm. They confirmed what I already knew. I was succeeding, while Marcus was squandering his time and energy on a fleeting affair. I was building an empire, and not just an empire of bricks and mortar, but an empire of self-worth, of independence. I spent the next few hours meticulously reviewing the progress, discussing timelines with the contractors, and tweaking the final design elements. The setting sun cast long shadows across the site, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. It was a beautiful sight, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of something akin to peace, maybe of unhappiness. Back at the house, I found Marcus sprawled on the sofa flipping through channels. He barely glanced up as I entered. "Dinner's ready," I said, my voice flat. "Not hungry," he mumbled, eyes glued to the television. I didn't push it. I'd stopped trying to reach him a long time ago. I heated up a plate for myself and ate in silence, reviewing the latest financial reports for Jenkins Construction. The numbers were staggering. Sunset Ridge alone was projected to generate more profit than anything we'd ever achieved together. Eleanor called, Marcus said suddenly, breaking the silence. "My daughter. My beautiful, intelligent Eleanor. She was getting married to Julian next spring. They've set a date," he continued, "and they're expecting Gusto contribute to the wedding expenses." He said the last part hesitantly, as if expecting an argument. I put down my fork. "Of course," I said calmly. "I'll take care of it." A flicker of something surprise, unease, crossed his face. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. He clearly expected me to be difficult, to refuse, to bring up his infidelity, his neglect, his general absence from our lives. But I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. I had a different plan. Actually, I continued, a small smile playing on my lips. I was thinking of surprising them with a little something extra. He looked at me, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I was thinking," I said, my voice light, "of gifting them a house. One of the new ones at Sunset Ridge." His jaw dropped. He stared at me, speechless, and in that moment, bathed in the soft glow of the kitchen lights, I knew I'd finally won. Not only had I built my own empire, but I had the power to bestow my success on those I truly loved, and that, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all. I hadn't just rebuilt my life. I had surpassed anything we'd ever had before. The real surprise, however, was yet to come. He didn't know just how much Sunset Ridge was worth. He didn't know just how successful I'd become. And he certainly didn't know that the house I was gifting Eleanor was just the beginning. The mahogany desk in Mr. Thompson's office gleamed under the soft office lights, a stark contrast to the knot tightening in my stomach. 3 years. 3 years since Marcus had blithely told me his girlfriend was moving in. 3 years since I'd walked away from what I thought was our life. 3 years of rebuilding myself, brick by agonizing brick. "Mrs. Jenkins, Mr. Thompson began, his voice a gentle rumble. "I've completed the audit you requested on Jenkins Construction's accounts." I nodded, my throat too dry to speak. "And I finally managed to croak out." He leaned forward, his expression grave. "There are significant discrepancies. Large sums of money have been systematically siphoned off into offshore accounts over the past few years. My suspicions had been confirmed. The gnawing unease I'd felt, the late nights Marcus claimed were business dinners, the hushed phone calls he'd taken in the other room, it all pointed to this. He hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. He'd been stealing from me, from the company we'd built together. "Can you trace the destination of these funds?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Mr. Thompson adjusted his glasses. Yes, the accounts are linked to a property in the Cayman Islands, a rather lavish villa. I understand. He paused. Registered in the name of Juliana Flores. Juliana. Of course. Marcus hadn't even been original. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface for years finally boiled over. All those lean years, all the sacrifices we'd made to get Jenkins Construction off the ground, the skip vacations, the pot noodles for dinner, all while he was funneling our hard-earned money to his mistress in the Caribbean. Thank you, Mr. Thompson, I said, my voice clipped. This is exactly what I needed. He nodded, offering a sympathetic smile. I'm sorry, Mrs. Jenkins. I stood up, my hand shaking slightly as I reached for my purse. Don't be, I said, a thin smile playing on my lips. This is just the beginning. Back in my own apartment, the city lights twinkling outside my panoramic window, I poured myself a glass of wine. I had meticulously documented every instance of Marcus's financial impropriety. My own financial savvy, honed over years of managing the books for Jenkins Construction before Marcus pushed me out, had served me well. I'd anticipated this, prepared for it. The irony wasn't lost on me. He'd underestimated me, dismissed me as just the wife, the bookkeeper. He'd thought I was blind to his machinations, too naive to understand the complexities of the business world. He'd been wrong. I swirled the wine in my glass, the ruby liquid catching the light. This wasn't just about the money. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, my future. It was about showing him and everyone who had ever doubted me what I was truly capable of. I picked up my phone and dialed Eleanor's number. Darling, I said when she answered, Julian's free this weekend, isn't he? I have a proposition for you both. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. I met with my lawyers, finalizing the paperwork that would expose Marcus's embezzlement and reclaim what was rightfully mine. I briefed Eleanor and Julian on their roles in my plan, their initial shock giving way to excitement as they grasped the sheer audacity of it. Eleanor had always been a shrewd negotiator, a trait she undoubtedly inherited from me, and Julian, with his legal background, was the perfect partner to ensure everything went off without a hitch. Are you sure about this, Mom? Eleanor asked, a flicker of concern in her eyes. Absolutely, I replied, my voice firm. It's time Marcus learned his lesson. On Saturday, we flew to the Cayman Islands. The tropical air hung heavy with the scent of hibiscus and salt, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. The villa was even more opulent than I'd imagined, a sprawling testament to Marcus's greed. I could almost picture him lounging by the infinity pool, Juliana by his side, oblivious to the impending downfall. As planned, Eleanor and Julian, posing as a young couple interested in purchasing the property, secured a viewing with the real estate agent. While they distracted Juliana with questions about the square footage and the imported Italian marble, I slipped unnoticed into the villa's office. There, on Marcus's desk, lay the very documents I needed, proof of his ownership of the villa, his offshore accounts, his carefully constructed web of deceit. I photographed everything, my hands steady, my heart pounding with a strange mix of triumph and sadness. This was it, the final piece of the puzzle. the evidence that would bring Marcus's world crashing down. As we boarded the plane back home, I looked out the window at the receding island, a sense of closure washing over me. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about liberation. I had taken back control of my life, not just financially, but emotionally. And as for the villa, let's just say I had plans for it. Plans that involved a certain daughter and her fiancé enjoying an extended, all expenses paid honeymoon. I think, I said to Eleanor, a genuine smile finally gracing my lips. You and Julian will find the Caribbean quite agreeable. The last rays of sun painted the Sunset Ridge development in hues of gold and rose. I stood on the newly paved road, overlooking the rows of finished houses, a feeling of profound satisfaction washing over me. It's beautiful, Mom, Eleanor said softly, coming to stand beside me. I smiled at her, a genuine smile that reached my eyes for the first time in what felt like forever. It really is, isn't it? I replied, squeezing her hand. This wasn't just a housing development. It was a testament to my resilience, my strength, and my unwavering determination to build something beautiful from the ashes of my broken marriage. I still can't believe you pulled this off, Julian said, shaking his head in admiration. He put an arm round Eleanor, drawing her closer. They were such a lovely couple, and seeing their happiness warmed my heart. It made all the struggles, all the sleepless nights, worth it. I had a little help, I admitted, gesturing towards the construction crew packing up their equipment in the distance. But I wouldn't have even known where to start without everything my father taught me. My father, the man who had instilled in me a love for building, for creating something tangible and lasting. He would have been so proud of this moment, of what I had achieved. Your dad would have been bursting with pride. Eleanor echoed my thoughts. She knew how close I had been to my father, how much his memory still meant to me. A wave of sadness washed over me, a pang of regret that he wasn't here to see this, to share this victory with me. But then I pushed the sadness aside. This wasn't just for me, it was for him too. Well, I said, clapping my hands together briskly, let's not get sentimental. We have a celebration to plan. Eleanor and Julian exchanged excited glances. Speaking of celebrations, Julian began, a mischievous glint in his eye. I have a little surprise for you, Pearl. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to me. My brow furrowed in confusion as I unfolded it. It was a document, a legal document, and as I read the words, my heart skipped a beat. This is a deed, I stammered, looking up at Julian in disbelief. For what? He grinned, a wide, infectious grin that mirrored Eleanor's. For a house, Eleanor chimed in. Right here in Sunset Ridge. My jaw dropped. I couldn't speak. A house, for me. Here, we wanted to give you something special. Julian explained, his voice filled with warmth. Something to show our appreciation for everything you've done for us, for everything you've overcome. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring the image of the beautiful homes before me. This wasn't just a development anymore. It was my new beginning. It was the place where I had rebuilt my life, brick by brick, after Marcus had shattered it. And now, it was also going to be my home. I don't know what to say, I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. This was more than I could have ever imagined. After everything I had been through, after the betrayal, the heartbreak, the struggle, I had not only achieved financial independence, but also found a place to truly belong. You don't have to say anything, Eleanor said, wrapping me in a tight hug. Just enjoy it, Mom. You deserve it. And as I stood there, embraced by my daughter, overlooking the fruits of my labor, I knew she was right. I did deserve it. This wasn't just revenge. It was redemption. It was the culmination of everything I had worked for, everything I had fought for. It was the proof that even when life knocks you down, you can always get back up, stronger and more determined than ever. And sometimes, just sometimes, the greatest revenge is living your best life, a life that is even more fulfilling than the one you thought you had lost. Come on, Julian said, breaking the silence. Let's go see your new house. He took my hand, and together we walked towards the future, leaving the shadows of the past behind. The setting sun cast long shadows, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the darkness. I was ready to embrace the night, knowing that the dawn would bring a new day, a new chapter in my life, filled with hope, happiness, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I had built something beautiful, something lasting, something entirely my own. And as we approached the house, a beautiful two-story with a wide porch and a view of the valley, I knew that this wasn't just a house. It was a symbol of my triumph. It was a testament to the power of resilience, the strength of family, and the unwavering spirit of a woman who refused to be broken.